The What It Takes Radio Company presents How to Be a World-Class Podcaster. And never fear, podcasting will not put books and publishing out of business. In fact, it will be your best friend. Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad that you've joined us. You want to be, or at least you're thinking about being, a world-class podcaster. How to be a world-class podcaster. My name is Stan Houston. I'm a long-time radio guy, and I'd like to take some time to help you be successful and enjoy this thing that is changing the world in terms of communication. And that's a problem for some because they're used to the old traditional ways of communicating. And that's what we're going to talk about today because you see, for many people who are wonderful, they are authors and writers and publishers, and they are in the business of writing wonderful books and publishing wonderful books. And that's what they hope they can do forever. And I hope they can. However, what is happening, and this is why we are doing this for you, is for you to better understand that the reason What It Takes Radio, the What It Takes Radio Company, is a podcast and publishing company. That's right. We are not just in the business of podcasting. We are in the business of helping people not only do a podcast, but become writers, communicators, and broadcasters. You see, anybody can learn how to do a podcast, and there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of different classes and courses that you can take on the simple thing about how to do a recording and how to perhaps post it up. But that will not work most of the time. You see, broadcasting and podcasting is much more a state of mind. It's a state of being. It's a state of wanting to do a number of things other than just do something. It's to engage with people, to build relationships, to have something to say, to tell a story, to bring some wisdom, insight, and truth, maybe some entertainment, something that's very important into people's lives. And because if it's important, it often needs to be heard. That's why podcasting is going to make its mark in the world today, and it already has. Now, what I would like to do is tell you why we call it a publishing company. Because not that we're going to publish a book, but we're going to help you publish your program, your story, that will help you sell your books and be able to put together a career and a life of being the author, the writer that you love. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what we mean by that. First of all, most of you are aware right now that Amazon, and they've been doing it for a few years now, it used to be that before you could do an audio book, you actually obviously had to do, quote, a real book. Well, of course, that's changed now. I one time talked to them a number of years ago, and they said, that's ridiculous. We'll never do this. And I said, what if I just want to do an audiobook? I don't want to publish it. I just want to do an audiobook. And they said, no, you can't do that. You have to have a real book first. Well, they've backed away from that. They, first of all, gave that privilege to some very important writers, but now anybody can have what we would call an audiobook podcast. That means you could take your book that's inside of you, and all you have to do is learn how to present it and perform it, and then put it together, and it has the form of a podcast. Each chapter, each episode is like a podcast, like a simple radio program, and it can be formatted just the way you would form, you might say, an audio book. But if you're smart, you won't just do an audio book. You will turn it into a conversation. You will make it a performance. Now, I have to tell you, a lot of the audio books I just don't like. because they are well performed in the sense that they are well read. And they are, they got the voice, they've got the style, they may even have a little intonation, but it's obvious that the book is being read by somebody who may not have even written the book, may not even care that much about the book, but they've got, as we say, the pipes, they've got the performance down, and in effect, they read the book well. However, what is really needed is that you have to take the idea of performing your book seriously, because that's what is changing. You will not just be able to read your book or have somebody read your book. Remember that in the podcast, there needs to be a much more of an expression, creativity, a connection, an engagement. Oftentimes it has to sound not like someone's reading the book to me, but they are reading the book for me, to me, almost as if it's a conversation. It's a part of our connecting together. So in the future, you need to understand that please write all of those good books. However, here's the possibility, and it's already being done. Before you write your book, think about performing it first. Take that first draft, that first thought that's in you, and refine it a bit, and then turn your chapter 1 into episode 1 and put it out there and see what happens. People may start to enjoy it, read it. You're testing it. Chapter 2, the next week, you put chapter 2 out there. By the way, even if you didn't write chapter 2, now you have the audio version, and that is sent through the technology, and you know what's going to happen. You now have chapter 1 and chapter 2. You actually have the first draft. Next week, you do chapter 3. And in 3 weeks, you have 3 chapters, first draft, and you are working on it. In fact, if you're really ambitious, you could probably perform and speak your book in a week. And there you have the first draft. Now, you listen to it, you feel good about it, you say, let's test it. And that's what you tell people. This is a podcast. We are performing this and telling you this story and sharing this information with you. And then we will take the podcast, which you get to listen to right now, and later on we'll turn it into a publication. Here's what's going to happen. You start to build an audience before you've even written the book. All of a sudden, people start responding to it. Now, one gentleman who kind of tried this, when he finally published his book, actually had credits for about 200 people. And the story was, he said, I put the book out there, and every week we put an episode out there, and people started responding to it, and they made suggestions to it. There were people who kind of corrected me on some details. They added some things that they knew. Sometimes they actually knew things that were very helpful to me. So what happened is that in doing and performing my book first as a podcast, not only did I have my first draft ready, I already had a gaining and growing audience who was waiting for the book because every week they waited for a new chapter or a new episode. At the same time, they were having a part of it. And every week we acknowledged that. And by the time we were done, we had a podcast that was profitable, maybe even financially, good enough to have sponsors. But what happened is we had the book ready to go into second draft. And we already had a waiting audience for it. We'd been able to test it. We had perhaps even discovered that, this has got to be changed a lot. We've got to start again. We've got to try again. But you discovered that right away rather than having printed and published it and taken the extreme time, energy, and money loss in it. It's good to know that. If it's not going to make it in the marketplace, it's good to know it before you actually have to pay to place it in the marketplace. So all of those are the reasons why, because we want to help. I love radio programs, but I love books. And there are lots of people who love books who also love radio programs and love the audio part. So, in effect, the way you will write a book in the future, in fact, that's exactly what I'm doing, is the books that I'm writing, I'm performing them first on video and on a podcast. From that, it's very simple to get a transcript, and that causes me and my editor to start doing the edit work right then. In effect, I can perhaps, because all of my books will be small, I can probably produce a book a month. Think about that. So that is the future. Not only will your audiobook be more profitable and presentable if it can be a part of the audible system of a podcast, also you can begin to promote your book and be able to maybe even pre-sell it. Maybe even begin to find some sponsors for your podcast and be able to find people who will actually start getting ready to accept your book for possible publication. All of that can be done because you are performing it in real time with real people engagement, with real energy, and with personality. You performed your book in order to write the book and to begin to put it in the marketplace even before it was written and published in the traditional sense. So I encourage you to think about that. At the same time, why don't you take time every week or every month just to talk to your audience? Why do they have to wait till you write your next book? They'd love to hear stories about you and of stories about the book you're writing and stories about the things you went through in your book. In effect, you not only become the writer whose book they're waiting for when it's finally published, you become a friend, someone who is very much real and more personable. And as a result of that, you continue to tell more and more stories and gain a larger audience. And so you are the person, and now you get invited to speaking engagements, to do performances, to give speeches about the subject. You don't have to wait until your book is published to start promoting you and your story and your ideas. Now, this is the new reality. This is the new reality. Podcasting. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and it will not necessarily be profitable in the sense that you're going to get people to sponsor it and make money that way. Though you might. What it does, it helps you become far more productive and far more effective and more fully engaged with your audience. You see, you don't have readers. You have an audience. You don't just have people who buy your book. You have an audience. And you can grow that audience in a continual and growing and more fully engaged way when they hear from you and get to laugh with you, hear stories from you, and be more and more a part of the things they love, not only about your book, but about your podcast, about your radio show, about your storytelling. They not only want to read what you have to say, they really want to hear what you have to say and hear what you are. You can be far more intimate and far more personal and far more engaged. And as someone has pointed out, a book is a dead tree. It lacks emotion or expression. Now, you can finally, if you're really good, cause a feeling of sadness or emotion or excitement inside. That can happen. And those of you who are really good know how to do that. But on the other hand, you can enhance that experience by bringing that to them right away. So that's why this is episode 2 in how to be a world-class podcaster. And that is to realize today there are hundreds of you, thousands of you, maybe millions who are writers, who are authors. You need to know that in the future that is right now, that's wonderful. That's good. But the future is going to belong to the writer and the author and the storyteller who can use the podcast and the visual medium to further not only their career, but help them sell more books, get more engagements, get more book signings, get more conference speeches, be able to actually show themselves not just as a writer, but as a speaker, as a teacher, as a performer, even as an entertainer. You say, Stan, I'm shy. Of course, most of you are. But that's okay. In fact, you'll find that that will be your greatest strength because you will learn how to project your full sincerity and your full personality in your podcast. My name is Stan. I want to help you. Reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com, and we will enjoy performing and writing a book together. Best and blessings. Take care. Bye for now. Until next time.